Digital marketing is more important than ever for estheticians and spa owners. And that's why I'm so excited to be hosting our first virtual aesthetic marketing seminar on August 24th and 25th from 10 to 3 Eastern Time. This is a live conference. We're going to be teaching you about funnels, about email marketing, about digital ads, all the things that you need to have in place as a spa owner so that you can be making money around the clock, whether that means virtual appointments or creating a system where your clients can book appointments online, selling your products through an e-commerce store, driving traffic to your website, all the things that are incredibly important, especially now more than ever, so that you can make money in your sleep. Use the internet, use technology as your own personal marketing team. We're going to show you how. I'm so excited, so passionate about this content. And the best part is that it's totally free. So I want you to click the link, get registered, and I can't wait to see you there. Hello, my dears, Daniela here, and welcome to another episode of the Spa Marketing Made Easy podcast. I love when serendipitous moments happen in life, and the way that I met today's guest was really, it felt like that. So back at our AMS in the beginning of the year, I was talking with one of our Growth Factor clients, Andrea, who, by the way, is such a total boss, and she's just absolutely killing it right now. So proud of her. But I was talking with her and I was asking who she thought would be a great guest for our podcast listeners, who could really add value. I'm always looking for great guests, and I love to ask our Growth Factor clients who really inspires them. So she immediately said JoElle Lee and went on to rave about how she was not only this incredibly knowledgeable, but also just had such a kind heart and was truly service driven. And she was someone who genuinely wants to help estheticians and our entire industry level up, like really get to that next level. Now, I knew who JoElle was, but I had never really met her personally. So I asked Andrea to send an email introduction. And not too long after that, COVID happened. My son was born. It was just like one thing after the other. And so that email introduction didn't happen. And then a few months later, I posted in our Spa Marketing Made Easy Facebook group, again, asking, who do you guys want for me to have on the podcast? Who is inspiring to you? And Andrea commented again, JoElle. And so this time I was texting Andrea and I'm like, I need an email introduction. Like, connect to me, because I always feel like having a personal connection is just such a better introduction. So this time she did. I got my introduction and we had our first call scheduled for an afternoon. This was when Luca was about 6 weeks old and my daughter was in day 2 of, we are no kidding, done with diapers, 100% potty training, like no nighttime diapers, like over it. I have a 6-week-old. I cannot have 2 kids in diapers. It was a big deal. So you can imagine the chaos of my house at that time. And so 5 minutes before our scheduled call, my daughter has an accident, which is then followed by a complete meltdown. And so I'm late to our call, right? Because I'm consoling my daughter. And if you guys know me, I hate being late. Hate it. In fact, I really feel so much more aligned with my German au pair's philosophy that she came in and she says, if in Germany, if you're not 10 minutes early, you're late. And I was like, okay, I like that. I like that. But for me, that's because time is such a valuable asset. That's the most important thing, is I don't want to waste anybody's time. And on top of it, I was so upset because that was my first impression with her. Well, JoElle was incredibly gracious And she actually ended up sharing some priceless pieces of advice about potty training since her son is a little bit older than my daughter. And so we just really connected over that. We connected as moms. And then we got into business, and I could really see her just kind of light up. I heard it in her voice, how passionate she was and how she really has this true desire to better our industry. And I knew right away that we would just be immediate friends. Now, you may know her as Michelle Obama's esthetician, but that is just one teeny tiny part of this incredible woman's story. She's got expertise in so many areas in the industry, but today we are specifically talking about treating skin of color. So this is a good one. Hope you enjoy it, and let's go ahead and play that interview. All right, JoElle, welcome to the Spa Marketing Made Easy podcast. I'm so excited to have you on here.
Hi, Daniela.
So I have been wanting to have you on the podcast for a long time. I was so excited when our mutual friend, Andrea, introduced us. I had been following you for a while, knew who you were. And when she connected us, I was just so honored to befriend you and build a relationship and really get to see what you're doing in our industry and how you're making such a positive impact. So I'm so excited to have you here to talk with our audience today.
Thank you.
Good episode.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
So for people that don't know you, your kind of claim to fame is that you're Michelle Obama's esthetician. And everybody's like, oh, Michelle Obama's esthetician. She has beautiful skin. She's obviously an incredible woman. I've had the pleasure to meet her in real life. And I was like, wow, you know, like how some famous people don't look the same in pictures as they do in real life. And she's beautiful. She's a stunning woman. But in our industry, what you're really known for and what you're just making such an incredible positive impact is teaching estheticians how to care for and treat ethnic skin, which is something that is very, very needed.
Thank you.
I know you, in the short time that we have been talking and connecting, we've had a lot of conversations, and I've learned so much from you. Our last conversation, we were talking about the Fitzpatrick scale.
Yes.
And I was like, okay, I've been in this industry for 14 years, however long.
However
long. I've done light and laser treatments and all this kind of stuff. And how I was taught is completely different than what you're teaching. Yes. So I wanted to really get into that because you've had obviously incredible success treating ethnic skin. You're trained in light and laser treatments as well.
Yes.
And we know, like with light and lasers, we're always taught like, oh, if they're skin type 3 or if they're skin type 4, like you better watch out, or there's you only can use a YAG or whatever it is, there
is some, I think that with all the information, there's a little bit of truth and myth in all of it. So there's a little truth to what you're saying. Like if you say, oh, I should only use the YAG, I do recommend a YAG being your safest option. I'm not saying a diode laser isn't effective, but you're probably going to have to do a lot more treatments. You're probably going to be incredibly conservative using it. So with a YAG, you're going to have a lot more room to push the envelope. Okay. In regards to the Fitzpatrick's or even the Fitzpatrick's chart, I think that the chart can be misleading only because if you're training a skincare professional to look at the skin tone only, and I know we have our questions that we ask or we have the consultation, but if skin tone is the primary thing you're looking at, especially when performing a laser treatment. And I remember this when I started training in lasers, in every training that this was the conversation. Okay, this is the skin tones 1 through 6. And if the person walks in at this tone, this is where you set the laser. And what's misleading is, and what I've always expressed in training, is that people of color come in every color of the Fitzpatrick's chart.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not asking enough questions about their background, there is still a lot of potential for you to burn the client or for you to have complications. So
go ahead. Can I ask you a question real quick? Because when I was taught, we were taught to, if the individual had Native American or if they were Asian, we were automatically supposed to treat them as a 4. And so we got taught that. But you're saying it doesn't matter if they're Native American or Asian, it's any person of color we need to ask.
Or any person of color. Well, again, are you knowing that they're Native American or Asian just by asking? Or are you assuming when they walk in by how they look? It doesn't mean I'm not Asian if I don't look Asian.
That's right, because we're so mixed also. We're so mixed.
Exactly. It doesn't mean I'm not Native American. So if you're just using your eyes, I'm saying you're going to create a lot of complications, which brings us back to, let's just be incredibly conservative and incredibly cautious. And I'm saying that you're going to have to ask the background questions and get very specific, because someone of color, like, I said to you in our conversation, can look like you.
I'm thinking right now of Meghan Markle and Prince Harry's son, because she's obviously a woman of color, and their son is, I think he has red hair, or
right.
like he's, and so by just looking at him, people may not
if he
guess.
Walked into a room, like I told you, my grandmother looks like you. Okay. Everywhere that I went with her, they assumed she was a white woman. And she even got burned by an esthetician with someone thinking that. It is so important for you to really fully understand people of color. I think that when we say words in the industry, ethnic, immediately you think of Black person. You go straight to African American. You're not thinking about Asian, nothing, right? So even if I say ethnic, that's a word that means, in my opinion, in this industry, Black. Okay. That's why I used the word multicultural skin, because I was trying to embrace all people of color without saying that I'm just treating someone who's African American. But it's also a lot more people, like you just said earlier, that have many races or they're mixed race. And you still don't know how the skin is going to respond based upon that. So it is very important that you get a lot more information, and you can't rely solely, definitely not on the Fitzpatrick's chart.
So are there any educational resources that you're aware? I know you have a book and courses and trainings and so on, but where do people find information on this? Because I know, like, for example, there's numerous studies that show that Asians, and when I say Asians, I'm including people from India as well, because they're considered Asians as well, but they tend to have keloid scarring. They tend to, there's different things that affect specifically Asians. I'm sure that there's things that affect specifically African Americans, specifically Hispanic, or like all different types of skin. Where's the best place to really educate yourself? Because I know that, like, we never can know everything, right? Like that's one of the beauties of this industry, is that we're always learning something new. I mean, I'm just sharing with the world how much you've taught me in a short period of time, but it's, how do we stay on top of these things when we're taught with the Milady's book, right?
Well, that's the thing. And I have this conversation a lot about what the foundation of our aesthetics education is, and about the Milady book. And everyone has to understand that when aesthetics began, which has not been around a very long time, this is still a very new license. there's one, I think Connecticut just got the license in this year. So, I mean, it's not even in every state, okay?
Mm-hmm.
It's still a fairly new program, but this program was originally based around a European method. Now, it has been Americanized, but it's based on European methods and European skin. So we have to understand that, okay? The problem is that people who are becoming estheticians and people coming in as your clients aren't just European, okay? And you're not getting enough knowledge across the board. Now, when you mentioned, yes, you know if someone's more susceptible to something based upon their ethnic background. I always look at skin like we look at the human body, and I say, listen, we all have the human body. The physiology and anatomy makeup of us is the same. However, based upon my ethnic background, I may be more susceptible to certain conditions or diseases. Okay. So if I'm someone of color, I might say, in my family or, my history is a history of diabetes. It's a history of high blood pressure. Someone who's not of color might say, we have a history of skin cancer. We have so it's hard to say, where are you going to get all that information? Okay. But if you're treating skin of color in your own experience, you are going to discover a common thread with people of color, especially with hyperpigmentation. There is not anyone who is of color that is not experiencing hyperpigmentation. That is how we respond to inflammation. Now, they're also, like you mentioned, keloids, very strong in the African American community. And there's also other conditions internally that can cause other skin conditions to happen that are susceptible in people of color as well. So one of the things I talk about is adult acne and how adult acne always leaves hyperpigmentation. And in women of color, one of the things that causes that can go undiagnosed is having fibroids, having PCOS. It's very common in Hispanic communities as well as African American. So it's a lot of things that you will find a common thread with your clients of color. And I'll honestly tell you, even with everything that I teach, it's been all based on my personal experience.
So are you talking about post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation, or is it hyperpigmentation from sun damage that's more common?
Well, there's three levels to it.
Okay.
There's three levels. So there's post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation, which I consider a very acute form of it, meaning I got a pimple this week, the pimple left, it left a mark. Then there's hyperpigmentation. I fell off my bike when I was 5 years old. It left a mark there. The mark has never left. Okay, I'm 50 now. I still have the dark mark from when I fell off my bike at 5. And then we have freckles, sun damage, or just hyperpigmentation that can develop as we mature. And of course, melasma. Melasma with Asian skin, Native American skin, as well as African American, melasma is huge, especially as you mature. And it's, in my opinion, can also be hereditary. So there's so many forms of hyperpigmentation, and there's different ways I address each one.
So I know that you have developed your own system using chemical peels, and that's something that has worked really well for you addressing hyperpigmentation and skin of color. So for me, coming from a medical background, it was always like, what peels can we use, right? It's like a 2% lactic, or, it's like it's very, so were you just kind of experimenting on yourself for like what works, or how did you develop your own system to safely use acids to address these issues?
What really happened was I was doing, besides Michelle Obama, I was doing other elite clientele. Okay. The goal was, I want significant results, but I can't risk any downtime. I can't risk peeling through makeup. My makeup is applied every day. I'm going to be on TV. I can't this and that. So I need something significantly to give me results, but I can't be at risk of burning, having downtime, or peeling. Now, I had always loved peels. I think that even if it was acne, if it was excessive oil production, if it was hyperpigmentation, if it was melasma, I'm usually bringing a peel in. Okay. But the way I started addressing it was, I can have a step up approach to this, and I can build the skin's resilience. And if I'm able to build the skin's resilience, I can go higher in the peels, and my results can get more significant. So that was my approach originally, was that I would push a little bit more. And I started to discover, I would have clients that got to a 50% peel, but I had to precondition the skin, pre-prep the skin over time. So then I developed the no downtime method. And that is, you can do a series of 6 peels over 3 months. I do perform them biweekly. You may start out at a 10% and then graduate to a 30 or 40 by the end of that series, based upon how much that skin can take, how sensitive the client is, and how much resilience has been built up in the skin during the peel series. But what a lot of estheticians don't know is that you can combine your laser treatments at the very same time, and you won't cause any harm to skin of color, combining laser treatments and doing peels in a series of treatments together.
So the approach that we always had in the different medical spas that I would work at is you do a peel to pre-treat, and then you would do the laser. So does it matter so when we're talking with lasers, for those who are not trained in a medical environment, lasers typically target pigment, blood, or water in the skin, depending on what the desired outcome is. They're all creating controlled injury in the skin, just like a chemical peel is doing. But when you are combining, when you're working with clients of color, women of color, men of color, how is there a specific laser that you're using in conjunction with the chemical peels, or is that kind of customized for the individual? Because when I'm thinking of hyperpigmentation, you think BBL, right? Like but that for me was always like a big no with skin of color.
I have only used the YAG 1064.
Okay.
On skin of color.
Okay.
And I usually do not perform a peel and laser the same day.
So you're doing like peel
2 weeks later.
Laser. Okay.
The laser 2 weeks later. So they're having 1 peel and 1 laser a month.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why. Your biggest concern whenever treating skin of color is you do not want to cause any additional inflammation.
Right.
Okay. Because now you're at risk of either causing hypopigmentation or hyperpigmentation. So I like to do the peel. You have a week to recover. And then when you come back the second week, I'm really free to set this laser where I want to. I'm prepared to do that. And I feel like when you combine modalities, that you are conservative in both, because if I know I'm getting ready to do the laser, I'm probably not going to use a peel that I would use if I knew you were only getting a peel today. And if I'm going to turn on the laser and you just had a peel, I'm going to say, well, I would normally set it here, but because you just had the peel, I'm going to be more conservative in my setting. So I like to keep them separate for that reason. And if something occurs, I know what happened. I'm not wondering, was it the laser or was it the peel?
So what inspired you because you obviously had a very successful career working on high-level clients, like so many estheticians dream, right? Like who wouldn't want that life? And you told me in a previous conversation, I love this quote of yours, and I'm probably going to mess it up, but you said,
okay,
you can correct me because I think you know what I'm talking about. You said, every day, every choice you make is a choice that has the opportunity to change your whole life or something.
I said that every day you're one decision away from a life change, meaning
yes.
I I can make one decision today to change an entire direction of my life.
Yes.
And you're always one decision away from that. We're making decisions all the time.
That is the Instagrammable quote from JoElle. I love that quote. I was like, okay, there it is. We're going to pull that one out.
But when you think about your life, there's so many significant decisions you made that changed the trajectory of that. And I know that happened in my career. And a lot of times you're not making decisions strictly based on uncertainty, right? You want to know what the outcome is going to be before you make the decision. But you're usually just one decision away from changing the direction of your life anyway. So you might as well make it.
So my question though was, what inspired you? What drove you to move into the education space? And I know you have a big desire to help and impact our industry, but what was that pivot? Was there something that happened that said, I really just want to help my industry?
Yeah. So I was already lecturing. So in other words, conferences would call and say, will you come and do a class? And I really enjoyed speaking, doing the classes, but so many people would be in these classes with so many questions about all the gaps in their education. Mm-hmm. And people actually started asking me, would you write a book? Would you do something? Will you make a course? Will you? And I was still really seeing clients, on a consistent basis. And I knew that was going to require a lot, but I started enjoying educating more. Mm-hmm. And I just started putting more energy into it. I still really enjoy it. One of the things I miss most during this time is still going out and lecturing or doing my live workshops. But I think what inspired me was when I saw the demand and when I saw how many people were reaching out to me for the answers.
Yeah, that you clearly had a gift, something that you could provide of value, of service. And that was, when you and I first had our conversation, it was like, we talked and we talked about potty training and all of that kind of mom stuff and connected, but I could tell right away that you came from a place of service and that you had an incredible amount of knowledge and that you really wanted to help this industry. And I feel exactly the same way. And so I was just so instantly connected with you and felt like this is a message that we really need to spread. And every esthetician out there needs to know JoElle and needs to take her course and needs to learn this because it's so important, right? You don't know what you don't know.
Right. And I think that we've kind of went along in this industry with that. I'm just going to be cautious. I don't think many think beyond. I was cautious. And I'm saying this, if you don't take the time to learn more about skin of color and to really train in more modalities and how to treat it, you're going to be out of touch with the aesthetics industry. You're going to be out of touch in the future. The future of this industry is going to be more people of color having services and more people of color performing them. And there's two things to this that there's a demand for. I saw a lot of clients who said, I only feel comfortable having someone of color treat my skin. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't necessarily mean that she had enough training to perform it either, but there's a sense that I've went to estheticians who were not of color and I wasn't getting any results, or I had this burn happen, or I had something severe happen. And I don't like that. I want to see, why can't we all just learn all skin? Why can't anyone of color walk into a place and they're not scared that she walked in, and she's not scared that she walked in?
Right. And what you said on another previous, we've had a lot of conversations, but another thing that you had mentioned that was really like impactful for me is that you have a skincare line and you had white women that were clients that were saying, can I use this on my skin?
Yes. I think because with hair, there's always been such a distinction with hair care and hair care products that people assume that, well, this must be only a line of skincare for someone of color. When the reality is, when it comes to skincare, it's that people design skincare around conditions, not necessarily the color of skin. And when you have a plethora of skincare out here that only addresses the needs of someone who's not of color, they assume that that brand is not for them. And I would like to see more of that with all the product lines and all the product companies. There's not a line addressing the common skin conditions for people of color. If you wanted to say, okay, my clientele's 80% clients of color, what line am I going to carry that's not anti-aging? You're going to have a tough time, or you're going to have slim pickings.
Okay, so let's talk about that. Why is that? Because when I think about SkinCeuticals or something like the way that they're marketing.
I can tell you why.
Huh?
I can tell you why. I mean, if you're a businesswoman, I'm a businesswoman. We all have our market.
Right.
We all have our target market. There's a lot of misconception. In other words, if I'm going to make a product line, I may assume, number one, that people of color aren't buying skincare. I may just assume that. I may assume that they're not worth being my target market, like there's no money in it. So I'm going to design a product that will meet the needs of a Caucasian woman between 35 and 65. These are the top conditions that she faces. These are probably the most common clients that will be coming into the spa as well. And I want to target spas that only target that type of woman, which we all know there's an abundance of that. Okay.
So. But my question is, because I'm from Hawaii, right? Mm-hmm. Hawaii is all people of color. It's a big mix. I would sell white women, brown women, black women. Mm-hmm. I would sell them all SkinCeuticals, right? But
SkinCeuticals, I know, didn't send you all this marketing material with people of color on it.
No, they didn't. But I'm thinking of vitamin C.
I know that they didn't. And I know that they were not targeting them.
But as an esthetician, is it a poor choice or a wrong? Is there a better option?
Because you were still using whatever product addressed the condition. And that's what I'm talking about. If you were addressing the concern and condition, you used what you could use in that moment. This is what SkinCeutical uses to address that.
Right. Because for me, I think they make, in my personal opinion, they have the best vitamin C.
Okay.
So anyone that comes in, regardless of what they look like, I'm going to say, for me, this is the best vitamin C.
Okay. So we could say everybody needs a vitamin C serum. Mm-hmm. But if I come in with a major condition, just that serum is not going to knock it out. What else do you have in your arsenal?
Of like what?
What are we going to do?
For a woman of color?
Yeah, what are we going to do? I am experiencing adult acne for the very first time in my life. I'm definitely perimenopausal. I also am getting some ingrown hairs. I've never had that. I have some hair growth along my jaw and chin line as well. And I'm having hyperpigmentation. What is your corrective program? What is your plan of action with your SkinCeutical back bar? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would probably do blemish plus age. I would probably do gentle, cautious hydrofacials because that's my...
But why the hydrofacial?
Ingrown hairs, exfoliation. Just trying to increase cellular turnover.
You're like, I'm not trying to set you up, so to speak.
No,
What
no,
I'm
no.
saying is, no one came in there and said to you, this is with all your equipment and all your products. No one came in your room and said to you, if this happens, this is the protocol.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm now giving people that protocol.
Right.
And that person
which
walks
is,
in.
yeah, which is needed, because I think it's like, you don't know.
Exactly. Right. And I'm saying that you only get a little bit of information. So when you have a client like that, and I know because these are the emails I get all the emails with all the photos. What do I do? Okay. And a lot of it is, I would approach it totally different, because what people don't realize is that doing skincare or having a skincare regimen or being exposed to skincare treatments, it's not equally taught across all backgrounds and nationalities. It's not. And that's another assumption that is made. You can be talking to a woman who's only used Dove soap her whole life. Anything that you're getting ready to do or introduce to her could potentially inflame her and make her sensitive. So it's so much more to it. And that's what I mean when I say it has to be very detailed conversation, consultation, getting their entire history and background, then deciding how are you going to move forward. I look at my clients more in programs rather than appointments. Mm-hmm. I usually, when a person comes in for the first time, they enter into a corrective program, a maintenance program, and prevention program. And each program has a set of appointments, what we're addressing and how we're going to measure results. So I didn't never look at my client appointment to appointment. It was always, I'm looking at you for us to have the end goal in mind, and this is what we have to do to reach those goals and results.
Very good. So you have a gift for all of our listeners.
Yes.
You have 10 most common mistakes that estheticians are making with skin of color.
Yes.
So for everyone who's listening, we've got a link here below the show notes. Make sure that you download that. Make sure that, that's going to be pure gold. You want to, for sure, continue to learn from JoElle. So JoElle, where is the best place for those listening to find you, follow you, stay in touch with you?
So if you visit my website, joellelee.com, you will find all of my online courses. You will find my books. You will also find the coaching that I offer, the coaching and mentoring. I also do a live show that's called Esthetician Spotlight, where I feature other estheticians. All that is on my website as well. On Instagram, it is JoElle Lee _aesthetics training. And on Facebook, it's JoElle Lee.
Perfect. And we'll get all of those linked up under the show notes. I think that this interview, this discussion was just like the tip of the iceberg, and there's just so much more goodness that can come out of it. So I really encourage every one of you to make the commitment to learn more about skin of color, because as estheticians, we are caring for skin, right? It's skin in general. That's it.
Yes.
So we need to know white skin, black skin, brown skin, like every type of skin that there is. We've got to know it all to really be the best at our craft.
Yes.
And so, yeah, JoElle is the one to teach you. All right, my dear. Well, thank you so much for your time, for your expertise. I appreciate you. And thanks again for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.